the death of Alexander the Great of ancient Greece, the causes of his death, and what took place in his last days. And we know that he lived around 330 BC. He was the cause of the destruction of the Persian Empire, of Darius and his empire, and he, in order to honor Darius, he married Darius's daughter Roxana, and took in the wife of Darius and treated her as his own mother. But this is a study done by Thomas Gerasimidis, Emeritus Professor of Surgery, Vascular Surgery School of Medicine of Aristotle University of Salonika. So it has to do with professors of surgery, vascular surgery. He says the cause of death of Alexander the Great has been the subject of interest for many scholars around the world, both medically and historically. There were and are many different opinions. Now let's remember that Alexander the Great is mentioned in the Old Testament in the book of Daniel, where the archangel Gabriel tells the prophet Daniel what will happen and the downfall of the Persian Empire by the little horn that comes from the north of the west. And he will only reign for 10 years, and his empire will not be inherited by his children, but it will be split into four. That's exactly what happened. It was split into four and given to his generals. So that prophecy was definitely fulfilled. Now, there were and are many different opinions, the professor of surgery states. Throughout his campaign, Alexander had several injuries and illnesses, as described by Arrian: fever with spasms, exhaustion, and acute insomnia at Tarsus in Cilicia, that's an area in Turkey, a spear wound and a cranial injury when his helmet was struck and destroyed during the Battle of the Granic River, a sword wound to his thigh at Issus, a penetrating arrow wound to his shoulder at Gaza, an arrow pierced his leg at the Oxus River, a stone wound to his head at Chiropolis in Sogdiana, acute diarrhea and abdominal pain due to drinking contaminated water in Scythia, an arrow wound to the ankle in India, a chest wound from an arrow piercing his rib cage, with Ptolemy, one of his generals, he took over Egypt later on, Ptolemy noting that air and blood breathed from the wound. Our research into his death focused on examining the signs and symptoms reported and interpreted by both the ancients, mainly Arrian and Plutarch, what they wrote, and the scholars. The initial symptom was acute abdominal pain after a large meal and drinking wine, followed by fever and daily progressive fatal aggravation over 14 days. Research through medical interpretation and the principles of evidence-based medicine led us to the conclusion that the world's greatest military leader, Alexander the Great, died of the most serious intra-abdominal infection due to acute pancreatitis that progressed to necrotizing pancreatitis and bile duct obstruction, with possible cholangitis secondary to severe sepsis of the blood. It was not malaria because the fever was not the type of fever associated with malaria, tertian or quartan fever. Furthermore, malaria does not usually cause death in this way or so soon. It was not pneumonia or a lung abscess because pneumonia rarely causes abdominal pain, especially not in the acute onset described. It was not poisoning because the course of Alexander's illness did not correspond to the effects of known poisons used in antiquity. In the study of 114 poisons or potential poisonous plants and animal poisons used in ancient times, none of these caused the symptoms of the disease that afflicted Alexander the Great. It wasn't typhoid fever because he didn't have diarrhea. It wasn't West Nile because that disease could cause encephalitis and not abdominal pain. It wasn't Guillain-Barré syndrome because its paralysis. It was not anything more than the inability to perform active movements due to electrolyte imbalance, septic condition, and shock. Conclusion: No incontrovertible findings have yet been uncovered to document the cause of Alexander the Great's death. These will be found when and if Alexander's tomb and mummified body are discovered and subjected to a forensic examination and autopsy. This research of ours with the existing evidence shows the serious possibility that King Alexander, Alexander the Great, died from the aggressive nature of acute pancreatitis and its complication, which even today is still life-threatening. Summary of the lecture of the Emeritus Professor of Surgery, Vascular Surgery, School of Medicine of the Aristotle University of Salonika, Thomas S. Gerasimidis, at IHA Zoom Forum on Thursday, November 24th, 2022. So this was his lecture from yesterday. This entire excellent and very interesting lecture, as well as the stage of observations, questions, and answers immediately after the lecture, posted on IHA YouTube and can be found there. The articles published on the website of IHA express exclusively the authors, members of the IHA. The IHA website does not censor, nor does it intervene in articles, texts of IHA members. That IHA means International Hellenic Association. So I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. My Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.